This is TWiT. All right, President Trump made the announcement a few hours ago that the United States would be withdrawing from the Paris Climate Accord, and the decision motivated many of tech's biggest players to become very vocal about it, both before and after. Joining us to talk about this decision and its effects on tech in general is Roberto Baldwin from Engadget. How's it going, Roberto?
It's going all right. So far, the rising seas haven't engulfed me, so, at least we have a few years.
Yeah, that's a plus, I'd say, in my book. First, I guess we should start with the basics here. For those who don't know, give us a little bit of a background on what the Paris Climate Agreement actually is before we get to kind of the tech industry response to it.
Sure. So in December 2015, 195 countries came together and decided to figure out a way to both halt our current sort of destruction of the planet, or just climate change, and try to figure out a way to bring it back. Now, the idea that we can get 195 countries on board for anything is insane, and so it's crazy. Everyone is on this except for Syria, Nigeria, or I'm sorry, not Nigeria, Nicaragua, Syria, Nicaragua, and now us. It's really more of a promise. It's a promise that everyone's making. We're going to promise to reduce carbon emissions, and it also helps with a lot of the emerging countries that can't afford to switch over to solar. They can't afford to switch over to natural gas. They can't afford to switch over to wind. So the superpowers, United States, Germany, Italy, Paris, all the people with a lot of, all these nations with a ton of money, they were going to help sort of pay to get these people up to speed. And now the United States has pulled out of it, and it's disappointing because it kind of flies in the face of science.
Yeah. Now, leading up to today's announcement, technology companies, bigwigs, people, heading these companies were getting involved with kind of warning against the decision. They have some skin in the game, aside from the fact that, we all live on the same planet. Elon Musk actually announced after the fact that he's leaving his advisory role to the administration over this decision, which, I mean, I read that. I'm like, okay, well, good for him. I wonder why this was the final straw. But I don't know, how could this decision actually affect the business of a company like Tesla or a company like Apple or Facebook? They've all made comments on this.
Well, the environment it's everything, really. Yeah. you have to be able to build upon land. As climate change progresses, we're going to have less land to build on. We're going to have these sort of it changes the weather and patterns. I mean, just the idea that we're part of an ecosystem, even though these are companies, they're still part of the same ecosystem the rest of us are on. And so, dealing with that ecosystem and dealing with other countries, and, when you are you're dealing internationally, it matters what people think of you. I mean, even for the tech companies, it matters. Like, well, you're part of the United States, but it's also political. This also matters to the United States. So things the United States might want that they're trying to talk other countries into, those countries might be like, no, you didn't sign the Paris Accord, and so we don't want to deal with you for this either. So that influences trade. It influences commerce. It influences everything. So it is really a global. We're part of a big giant blue ball spinning through space, and at some point, we all have to work together for something, and this seemed like the thing that was going to bring everyone together. And to pull ourselves out of it because of some sort of weird idea that it's bad for trade, it's bad for the economy is really short-sighted, because it's actually bad for trade and the economy in the long term.
And so there were reports that Tim Cook actually personally called Trump and asked him not to do this. Intel and others were making even advertisements kind of commenting on this. Nike and Disney have even spoken on this. It looks like Bob Iger just left an advisory role as well. Do you expect, Robbie, that tech CEOs and CEOs in general and companies in general will be commenting on this further? Or what? Because it sounds like Trump actually wants to try to renegotiate some sort of re-entry back into the Paris deal, he said today. or maybe even try and come up with something new seemingly on his own. But again, like you said, more than 100 countries have already bought into this idea. So what influence could these executives have now?
Yeah, that's a good question.
And that's the thing, is that these people have been on this advisory board, and Elon Musk especially has sort of stayed on the advisory board because he wanted to be that, I guess, that sort of voice of reason when it came to the environment. And I understand that argument that you want to be the person in the room that says, no, climate change is real. We actually have science that backs that, as opposed to this sort of conspiracy theorist idea that, oh no, it's not real. Weather patterns change all the time, and yeah, they change all the time, but not at the alarming rate that they are now. And so you have you had Musk on the team, you have all these other people. And then you finally have to realize that he's not going to listen to you. The administration is not going to listen to your science-based argument. And if it's not, then what's the point of being there? And I think a lot of tech CEOs, GE, the CEO of GE also spoke out. Like you said, Bob Iger. I mean, you have a lot of companies that are saying this is a bad deal. We should have stayed in there. And, the Paris Accord isn't perfect. I mean, nothing's perfect, but 194 countries working together for one goal is substantial and impressive. And to pull out of it for short-term, political reasons is insane.
It's going to take years, though, to actually unwind all this, correct? I mean, this is technically a move that should outlast his administration, if it goes the full 4 or 8 years, to actually unwind, right? This is kind of complicated stuff, correct?
Yeah, so it'll take 4 years for the United States to sort of be pulled out, to fully pull itself out of the Paris Agreement, and it's actually the day after the next election. So, expect, in 2 years, when people start gearing up for the election, this is going to be something people are going to talk about. You expect the Democrats are going to be talking about it a lot. And, the Republicans, maybe, if they decide to go in another way, Trump's losing a lot of support in his own party, so they might find someone else to replace him. And for him, I mean, he's going to use it as a talking point. I pulled the United States out of this sort of globalist idea. And he's very nationalist. He wants America first, and anything that has to do with the globe is bad for America, which unfortunately isn't true, because it's not 1950. We deal with everyone all the time, constantly. So you have to sort of look at a global scale. But he might, in 4 years, if he runs again and people say, you know what, I like that he pulled out of the Paris Accord, he might be reelected based on that.
Mm-hmm. So a lot of local governors and mayors and state and city level politicians have come out and said that they are going to stick with the ideals of the Paris Accords. And Nike, Facebook, all these different companies have come out and said, we're going to still move towards energy independence and green energy and all these sorts of things. Zuckerberg actually put out a statement saying that Facebook wants to get to 100% renewable energy regardless of this. So how much of a difference could those companies and those local governments and statewide governments make in maybe basically resisting this idea of pulling back on these agreements?
Well, California, especially, for years, decades really, California has been the strictest emissions area in the world. If you wanted to sell a car in California, which we love cars, I love cars, you had to adhere to our very strict carbon emissions. California continuing down that road means that if you are GM, if you're Toyota, if you're Ford, you have to make a car that adheres to California's strict emissions. So that does help a little bit. And then you have to look at the global scale. GM is not going to switch gears on its, this Bolt EV, and Toyota is not going to switch gears on their EV roadmap. I mean, these roadmaps are built out 5, 10, 15 years into the future. They're not going to switch gears because we decided as a country, and this really is, as a country, decided to pull out of this. It's important for the cities and the states to sort of stay the course environmentally, and because it forces these companies to continue to stay the course, because they want to sell their products, they want to sell their services in these states, in these cities, and so it does help. it would, but when if we had the whole country behind it, it would be better.
Yeah, and I was going to lead into vehicles, which I think is definitely one of the categories that's directly potentially impacted by this. They have their own efforts going on. What does this say about innovation and the progress and innovation that's being made in green when it comes to autonomous vehicles and electric vehicles and their efforts there? I mean, it sounds like from what you're saying, really it'll end up being business as usual because they've already kind of decided to go that route. Whether the United States decides to pull out or not, they're still going to kind of go that road.
Yeah, there are regulations in place. Automakers have to make a certain amount of vehicles that are EV or they're hybrid, and Trump might pull those out. But the customers are starting to look at these. They're starting to sort of to glom onto these. I mean, San Francisco, there's a ton of Teslas. There's a ton of Bolt EVs, but it's San Francisco. I mean, it's a bit of a bubble. But the rest of the nation can look at a car and say, you know what? I can just charge this car in my garage at night, get up in the morning, drive to work, do anything else I want during the day, not have to stop by, the gas station. Just come home, charge it again in my garage. I'm going to save money. I'll never have to worry about changing oil again. I mean, there's a lot of sort of practical byproducts that come from EV use, and the automakers see this, and we're probably going to be seeing more EV SUVs because the SUV market is still growing. Everything else is a little flat, but like I said, these are huge roadmaps. Every automaker wants to be innovative now. They all want to be tech companies. They all want to be the next Apple for your cars. So they're not going to reverse course because of one decision made by the U.S. government.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's at least a glimmer of hope, I'd say. If all these companies have already kind of decided, and many of the major ones, Facebook, Google, they already have, have committed themselves to being 100% renewable energy, all this type of stuff. It's not like a decision like this suddenly makes them change their minds and be like, yeah, actually, let's just start throwing energy all around.
Yeah.
So I guess that's a good thing, right?
Let's just have coal burn. Let's just have a tire fire to run all of Facebook's
no big deal.
Servers. I mean, these huge companies, it looks good. I mean, it's a great PR if you are a green company, and that plays well everywhere in the United States. That plays well internationally. So even if it's a PR, or if it's a tax break or whatever, it's still every little bit counts as we're watching the ice shelf sort of fall apart and glaciers just recede, and we have to figure out something, because eventually the real losers in all this are humans.
Yeah,
that's everyone's like, well, we're worried about a spotted owl or we're worried about an ocelot. I'm like, no, at the end of the day, 150 years, might not be humans, because we messed everything up. And we could talk about going to Mars or whatever, but really we should fix where we live now, because after we're gone, if we totally hose the entire planet, after we're gone, nature will just bulldoze over us and start over.
Yeah.
Well, nature, just like the very the genius Jeff Goldblum. Nature finds a way.
Well, I think NASA's also figured out a way. They're sending things into the sun, so that's not a bad idea. We can just go towards the sun.
Send everything into the sun.
Whatever, we're done.
Throw your tires there.
Roberto Baldwin with Engadget.com. Always great to get you on, Roberto. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
We'll see you again soon.